The forest was alive, but it spoke in whispers. The air was thick with fog, glowing faintly from strange blue plants that pulsed like breathing hearts. Shadows moved between the trees, and quiet eyes watched from the dark. It was not Earth. This world was wilder, hungrier. Something small crouched low behind a cluster of roots. A young predator cub, maybe 4 months old. Its fur was black with streaks of silver that shimmered under the twin moons. Its claws dug into wet ground. Its heart beat fast, not from fear, but from the thrill of the hunt. The cub's name was Karen. He was not supposed to be alone. His pack hunted together, following the alpha's call. But today, Karen wanted to prove himself. He wanted to catch something strong, something that would make his pack respect him. And now he had found it. In the clearing ahead, a creature moved slowly through the mist. It was tall, with a strange upright shape, 2 legs, 2 arms, and a hood over its head. It carried a small pack on its shoulders and a tool made of metal on one side. The scent was new, not like any prey Karen had hunted before. He watched carefully, nose twitching. The scent was warm, alive, and different, too clean, too sharp. He didn't know what to call it, but he had heard stories. The elders of his pack spoke of the outsiders. They came from the stars, built fire from light, and hunted not for hunger, but for control. They called them humans. Karen had never seen one before, and now there was one walking right into his forest. He crept closer, silent as smoke. His muscles tensed. His pupils grew wide, reflecting the glow of the plants. Every instinct screamed at him to leap, to sink his claws into that strange, soft skin and prove his strength. But something held him back. The human stopped. She turned her head slightly, like she had heard something. Karen froze. She couldn't see him. No one could see him in the dark. His kind were born for silence, for the hunt. Then the hood moved, and the human's face became clear in the moonlight. She was a woman, young, but her eyes looked older. Her hair was dark, cut short, her skin pale from cold light. A faint scar across her cheek, like a memory. Her name, though Karen didn't know it yet, was Marahale, a scout from a crashed human ship that had fallen into this wild world 2 months ago. Mara didn't move fast. Every step she took was slow and quiet. She wasn't afraid of the forest. She had already learned what lived inside it, and how to survive. Karen watched her for several minutes. She never looked straight at him, but somehow she seemed to know where he was. When she stopped near a stream, she knelt down, dipped her hands in the water, and drank. The cub lowered his body, ready to pounce. His claws clicked softly against a rock. Just one leap, quick and clean. He could almost feel the warm blood on his teeth. But before he could jump, Mara's voice cut through the air. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Karen froze. The sound of her voice was calm, too calm. It wasn't the sound of prey. She didn't turn around. She just stayed there, hands in the water. "I can hear your breathing," she said quietly, "and your tail keeps brushing the leaves." The cub's fur stood on end. How could she know that? His tail stopped moving. His body went still. Then she finally turned her head, and her eyes met his. They were gray, cold-focused, but not cruel. For the first time in his short life, Karen felt something strange deep in his chest. It wasn't fear. It was something worse. It was confusion. Mara smiled slightly. "You're not very good at hiding, little one." Karen's lips curled. A growl slipped from his throat, low and angry. He wanted her to run. That was what prey did. But she didn't run. She stood up slowly, brushed the dirt off her gloves, and looked straight at him. "You're young," she said. "Not dangerous yet. But give it a year or 2. She took a step closer. Karen flinched. No prey ever approached a hunter. "I wonder," she whispered, "does your pack know you're out here?" Karen hissed, baring sharp teeth. His tail lashed. He wanted to leap, but something about her presence held him still. Mara's hand moved to the side of her belt, not fast, not threatening. She pulled out a small glowing device. It hummed softly. The cub didn't understand what it was, but instinct told him it was dangerous. "Go home," she said softly, "before something worse finds you." Karen took one step back, eyes fixed on her. The fog thickened between them. Then, just as he began to retreat, Mara did something he would never forget. She growled. Not like a human, not like prey. It was deep, raw, and perfect, a sound a species used only to challenge death itself. The forest went silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Karen's heart pounded. His instincts screamed in confusion. This was not prey. This was not weakness. This was something else entirely. Something that hunted back. The cub, Karen, stood frozen where he was. The sound that came from a human's throat still echoed in his ears. That deep growl that didn't belong to her kind. It was impossible. No human could make that sound. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. His instincts warred with his pride. He was a hunter, born from the strongest bloodline of his pack. Yet his body refused to move. The growl had touched something old inside him, something buried deep, the kind of fear that no training could silence. Mara stood still too, eyes never leaving him. She didn't raise her weapon or make a sound. The forest around them was silent, waiting. A drop of water from the leaves fell between them and vanished into the dirt. Then, slowly, Karen's courage returned. His fur bristled, and his claws dug into the ground again. He refused to be humiliated by some strange two-legged creature who talked too much. He was a predator. He was born to hunt. He took one step forward, then another, each movement low and smooth. His golden eyes locked on her throat. His muscles tensed. Mara sighed softly. "So that's how it's going to be," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was a spark behind it. Something wild. She shifted her feet just slightly, as if preparing for what she knew was coming. Karen leapt. He shot through the fog like a black arrow, claws out, teeth flashing. The air split with the force of his jump. His heart roared in his chest. The taste of victory just seconds away. But the human moved. Not away. Not back. She stepped in. It happened faster than his eyes could follow. She twisted to the side, caught his paw midair, and used his own weight to throw him over her shoulder. He hit the ground hard, the breath flying from his lungs. Pain shot through his ribs. Before he could get up, she was already kneeling beside him, her hand pressed against his neck, firm but not cruel. Her eyes were sharp, but calm, the eyes of someone who had seen danger before and learned to live with it. "Easy now," she said softly. "You're quick, but you don't know how to finish." Karen growled again, trying to twist free. His claws raked the dirt, but she didn't flinch. Her strength was unnatural for a creature her size. Humans were supposed to be weak. So how was she holding him down? "Don't bite," she warned quietly. "I won't hurt you unless you make me." He didn't listen. He snapped at her hand, but she moved it just in time, tapping his snout with her fingers. The touch wasn't violent, but it carried power. "Enough," she said. That word hit harder than any strike. It wasn't loud, but it commanded. It carried weight, like the voice of an alpha. Karen froze again, unsure why. Mara studied him for a moment. "You're just a cub," she murmured. "Too young to know better." Her tone softened. She let go of his neck, keeping a few feet of space between them. He rolled to his side, breathing hard, tail twitching in confusion. He should attack again, but for some reason, he didn't. "You're far from your pack, aren't you?" she asked. "Trying to prove yourself?" Karen hissed, ears folding back. He didn't understand her words, not all of them, But the tone, it was strange. It wasn't mocking. It was understanding. Mara looked up at the twin moons through the trees. "I get it," she whispered. "I did the same once." The cub blinked. What was she talking about? She smiled slightly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "When I first joined the fleet, I thought being brave meant being alone. Turns out, it just means you bleed where no one sees it." He didn't understand the words, but he felt the feeling behind them. Loneliness. Mara stood and dusted her gloves. She looked down at him again. "If I wanted to kill you, I would have done it already. So stop testing me, little hunter." Karen growled weakly, but there was no strength in it now. She turned away, walking toward the stream again. The cub's mind raced. No creature had ever turned its back on him and lived. Yet, as he watched her go, he didn't move. He couldn't. There was something about her, something in her calmness that unsettled him. The fog drifted through the trees again, carrying the faint glow of the plants. Mara's silhouette vanished and reappeared between the mist like a spirit. "You can follow if you want," she said without turning around. "But if you try that again, I won't hold back." Karen blinked. He didn't know what to do. His instincts told him to retreat, but curiosity clawed at his chest. For the first time, he wondered if he had met something higher than predator or prey, something in between. He crouched low again, not to attack, but to observe. She was no ordinary creature. The forest seemed to bend around her. Even the night sound stayed quiet when she walked. Mara moved deeper into the shadows, the sound of her boots soft against the soil. Karen followed from a distance, hidden among the glowing roots. She had defeated him, but he couldn't stop watching. Something inside him, maybe fear, maybe fascination, whispered that this encounter wasn't over. And deep within the alien forest, under two silent moons, a strange new hunt had begun. This time, neither of them knew who was truly stalking the other. The forest was quiet again. The fog had settled low, wrapping the ground like soft smoke. Twin moons hung high, watching in silence. The wind whispered through the tall, silver-leaved trees, and somewhere far away, a creature howled, not in hunger, but in warning. Mara walked slowly through the mist. Her boots crunched softly on the damp ground. The air smelled like rain and metal. Every sound echoed for miles in this strange world. Behind her, a pair of golden eyes followed, low and cautious. Karen had not gone home. He had tried. He really had. After she threw him down, after she growled like one of his kind, every part of him screamed to run, to escape, to hide from the impossible human who had bested him without blood. But curiosity was a stronger hunger than fear. Now he stalked her from the shadows, silent, focused. She didn't look back, but he knew she knew he was there. Every now and then she would pause, tilt her head slightly, then keep walking, as if daring him to come closer. Mara's thoughts were steady, calm, and sharp. 2 months alone in this wild world had taught her everything she needed to survive: how to make fire from cold stones, how to sleep lightly enough to hear danger breathe, and how to fight without mercy. But this cub, he was different. Most creatures fled from humans or attacked blindly. This one watched, studied, waited, and that made him dangerous. Still, she couldn't bring herself to kill him. Not yet. After an hour of quiet walking, Mara stopped in a small clearing surrounded by tall black trees. The ground shimmered with soft blue moss, glowing like starlight. She knelt down, placed her pack beside her, and started building a small fire. The spark lit, and warm orange light bloomed against the cool fog. The cub flinched. Fire, the mark of the outsiders. His pack said that the glow of human fire was cursed, that it marked death for all who drew near. But this fire didn't feel cursed. It felt alive, gentle. He crept closer, tail low, muscles tense. Mara didn't look up. She tossed a few dried roots into the flame and spoke without turning her head. "If you ever keep following me," she said, "you might as well sit where I can see you." The cub froze. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't mocking. It was calm, almost welcoming. When he didn't move, she chuckled softly. "Suit yourself." She took out a small metal pan and poured something into it from a pouch. The smell spread fast. Rich, salty, unfamiliar. Karen's stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since dawn. Mara heard it. "Hungry, huh?" She lifted the pan and blew on it. "Can't blame you. It's been a long day for both of us." She broke off a piece of cooked meat and tossed it into the shadows. It landed near his paws. Karen didn't move. He stared at it, then at her. This had to be a trick. But the scent was too strong, too warm. Cautiously, he stepped forward, sniffed the air, and ate it. His eyes widened. The taste was strange but good. Smoky, soft, rich with flavor he'd never known. Mara smiled faintly. "See? Not poison." For a long while, they stayed like that, the fire crackling, the cub watching, the human silent. Somewhere between them, a strange understanding began to grow. Finally, Mara spoke again. "You're bold for a cub. I'll give you that." Karen tilted his head, not understanding the words, but sensing the tone. Calm, almost proud. She looked into the fire. "You remind me of someone," she said softly. "My little brother, always charging in without thinking. He used to say fear was weakness. I told him fear's what keeps you alive." Her voice grew quiet. He didn't listen. Karen blinked. The tone in her voice had changed. It carried pain, a kind of sorrow he'd never heard before. The firelight danced across her face, and for the first time, she looked small. He made a soft noise, not a growl, not a hiss, just a sound of curiosity. Mara looked up at him and smiled, tired but kind. "You want to know what I am?" she asked. "Fine. I'm human, and I don't belong here. My ship fell from the sky, and everyone else didn't make it." She took a deep breath. "Now I'm just trying to find a way to stay alive." The cub didn't know what a ship was, or what skyfall meant, but he understood that word. Alone, he stepped closer, just a few feet from the fire now. His golden eyes reflected the flames. Mara stared at him for a long moment. "You really aren't afraid of me anymore, are you?" Then she did something that made him freeze again. She growled, not soft this time, not like before. Louder, deeper. The sound rolled through the clearing like thunder. It wasn't a challenge, it was communication. Karen's ears twitched. That sound. It wasn't perfect, but it was close enough to his pack's language to mean something. Her growl said, "I see you." The cub blinked, stunned. No, humans should know that sound. Mara smiled faintly. "You understand me, don't you?" "At least a little." Karen didn't move, didn't blink. For the first time, he didn't see prey or threat. He saw something else, a creature that wasn't from his world, but somehow spoke its voice. The fire crackled. The wind shifted. And for the first time since he was born, Karen lowered his head, not in fear, but in respect. Mara whispered softly, almost to herself, "Yeah, I see you too, little one." And under the glowing trees of an alien night, predator and human shared a moment of quiet understanding. The fire burned steady through the alien night. Its orange glow painted the trees in soft light, mixing with the blue shimmer of the moss around the clearing. The wind had grown quiet. Even the insects had stopped their songs, as if the forest itself wanted to listen. Mara sat cross-legged beside the fire, holding a small stick in her hands. She slowly turned it, letting the heat warm her gloves. Across from her, half hidden in the shadows, Karen watched every movement. His golden eyes reflected the flames like twin coins of light. Neither spoke for a long time. The crackle of fire was the only sound between them. Mara finally broke the silence. "You know," she said softly, "where I come from, we sit like this when the day's work is done. We tell stories to the night. It helps keep the dark away." Karen tilted his head. He didn't understand the words, but her tone was soft, like a hum. The sound of her voice carried a calm rhythm that reminded him of his pack's old chants before the hunt. Mara smiled faintly. "You don't understand me, huh? That's fine. Stories don't need words." She picked up a small piece of wood and tossed it into the fire. Sparks danced up into the air like tiny stars. Karen's eyes followed them. He'd never seen light move like that before, alive, free, playful. "When I was a kid," she said, "I lived near the edge of a desert. Hot winds, red sand, and nothing but dust for miles. My brother and I used to watch storms roll in from the distance, huge walls of lightning and dust. He thought they were alive. He used to say they were giants waking up." She smiled at the memory, then her face softened. He wasn't wrong. Karen shifted closer to the fire, his paws barely making a sound. The warmth brushed against his fur. He liked it. Strange, but comforting. Mara noticed him moving closer. She didn't react, didn't make him feel seen. She knew predators didn't like being stared at when they approached. "I joined the fleet when I was 19, she continued quietly. "They said the stars were full of hope. Turns out they're full of teeth." Her voice dropped lower, almost to a whisper. "When the ship fell, I thought it was over. The fire, the screams, it all ended fast. I remember grabbing the crash pod, locking the coordinates, and then silence. When I woke up, I was here." She poked the fire with the stick. "Didn't even know this planet had predators like you. Lucky me." Karen's ears flicked forward. He didn't understand, but he could feel something deep in her voice. Sadness mixed with iron. She was like the old trees of his world, scarred but still standing. The human took a deep breath and leaned back against a rock. "You ever lose someone?" she asked softly. "Someone who made you brave?" Her question floated in the air. Karen didn't know the meaning, but the feeling behind it, that heavy ache, he knew that. His pack had lost many during the last winter storm. He remembered the empty dens, the silent nights. Without realizing it, he made a soft sound. Not a growl, not a hiss, something quieter. A sound cubs made when calling for comfort. Mara turned her head, her eyes catching the firelight. "Yeah," she said, "that's what I thought." For a moment, their eyes met. Something passed between them, not language, but understanding. Mara reached into her pack and pulled out a small device. When she pressed a button, a faint blue light projected upward, forming a small, spinning hologram of a planet. "Earth," she said simply. "Home." Karen blinked at the tiny glowing sphere. He stepped closer, sniffing at the air. The projection shimmered when his nose passed through it. He jumped back, startled. Mara chuckled. "Easy there. It's not real. Just light." She tilted her head at him. "You don't have anything like this, do you? Your people live with the ground, not above it." The cub sat down, eyes locked on the swirling blue globe. He didn't know what he was seeing, but something about the human's tone, the way she said home, made his chest feel tight. "Yeah," Mara whispered. "It's far away now, maybe too far." The fire popped loudly, breaking the silence. Sparks flew up again, vanishing into the fog. Karen followed them with his gaze, as if trying to see where they went. "Stories," Mara said after a pause, "are what keep us alive. The moment you forget them, the dark wins." She tossed another log into the fire. The flames rose higher, throwing their light against the trees. "I don't know what your kind believes in. Maybe you have stories too, about the hunt, about the moons, about why the stars burn. I'd like to hear them someday." Karen blinked slowly, then made a low rumbling sound, not a threat, but an answer. It was a kind of sound his species made during peace. Mara smiled softly. Yeah, I'll take that as a yes. The night stretched on. The fire burned low. Somewhere far off, a pack howled, long and deep. Karen's ears twitched. That was his pack's call. They were near. He looked toward the sound, then back at Mara. His instincts told him to go, to return to his kind. But something kept him there. Mara stared into the flames. You should go, little one, she whispered. Your family's calling. But Karen didn't move. He stayed where he was, tail curling around his paws, eyes locked on the human beside the fire. And for the first time since either of them had arrived in this strange, dangerous world, neither felt alone. The night was still, but the peace felt fragile, like a thin sheet of glass ready to break. The fire burned low, soft and golden, casting gentle light across the clearing. Mara sat quietly, half asleep, her head resting on her arm. The forest whispered, the wind slow and cold. Karen lay near the edge of the firelight, his tail curled tight around his paws. His eyes stayed open, watching the dark between the trees. Something felt wrong. The air was too heavy, the silence too deep. Then he heard it, a sound older than fear itself, a growl, not his own. It came from the woods beyond the clearing. Low, deep, powerful. Karen's ears flattened. His fur stood on end. He knew that voice, the voice of his alpha. His pack had come. Mara stirred at the sound. She sat up slowly, scanning the darkness. You hear that too? She whispered. Karen didn't move. His body tensed, every instinct screaming. He wanted to warn her, but he didn't know how. From the shadows, eyes appeared, golden, red, silver. One by one, they opened, glowing like stars among the trees. Then shapes followed, large, silent forms slipping through the fog. 6 of them. Bigger, older, stronger. Predators. His family. The alpha stepped forward first. Massive, scarred. His fur was dark as stone, his breath steaming in the cold air. His gaze locked on Karen, then shifted to Mara. He growled, and the sound rolled through the forest like thunder. Mara slowly stood, one hand on her sidearm, but not raising it. Let me guess, she murmured. You're the welcoming committee. The alpha bared his fangs, lips curling back. The other pack members fanned out, circling the clearing. Their paws made no sound on the moss. Karen stepped forward, trembling. He let out a sharp whine, a cub's call for peace. But the alpha didn't answer. His eyes burned with anger. Karen had been missing for days, and now the scent of human clung to him like shame. The alpha growled again, louder. Why are you with her? Karen crouched low, tail flat, trying to explain. But there were no words, only instincts. He turned toward Mara, as if to shield her. That was a mistake. The alpha lunged. Mara moved instantly. She didn't run. She stepped sideways, rolling as a huge beast struck where she'd been standing. His claws tore into the dirt, missing her by inches. The pack roared as one. The clearing exploded into chaos. Shadows and light, growls and fire. Mara pulled her blade, a short plasma-edged weapon that hissed in the air. She didn't want to kill them, but she wasn't going to die either. Karen jumped between her and another predator that tried to flank her. He snarled, showing his teeth. The packmate hesitated, confused, then snapped at him. Their claws clashed, cub against warrior. Karen was thrown back, yelping in pain. Mara's anger flared. She turned, striking fast, the plasma blade slicing through the air, bright blue against the night. The light blinded the beast for a second. She used that moment to stand her ground. Stay back, she shouted, voice sharp and commanding. Her tone cut through the noise. Even the alpha paused. Karen crawled his feet, blood streaking his leg. He growled weakly, limping beside her. His pack stared, stunned. A cub standing with prey against his own blood. It was unthinkable. The alpha's growl deepened. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate. Mara steadied her stance. Her breath came in calm bursts, eyes locked on the massive creature before her. "I don't want to hurt you," she said quietly. "But if you try that again—" She didn't finish. The message was clear. The alpha lunged again. But this time, Mara didn't dodge. She met his charge head-on. The impact shook the ground. Her blade slashed across his shoulder, sparks flying as the plasma burned through fur. The alpha roared in pain, spinning away. The rest of the pack froze. For the first time in their lives, they saw their leader wounded, not by claw, not by beast, but by a small, fragile human who refused to fall. Mara's eyes burned with cold fury. She didn't speak. She didn't taunt. She simply raised the blade again, ready. The alpha growled once more, but this time it wasn't rage. It was confusion. His gaze shifted between her and the cub who stood by her side. Karen limped forward, growling weakly at his pack. The sound was full of pain, but also strength. "Stop." The others hesitated. The air hung thick with tension. Then, one by one, the pack began to step back. The alpha's breathing slowed. He looked at the human, then at the cub, and let out a low rumble, a sound that meant both warning and respect. He turned away. The pack followed, fading back into the fog. The forest swallowed them whole. When the last growl faded, silence returned. Only the fire crackled softly, its glow warm against the cold air. Mara slowly lowered her weapon. Her hand shook slightly. She turned to Karen. "You okay, kid?" The cub limped closer and sat down beside her, breathing hard. She knelt, brushing a hand lightly over his shoulder. "You're one tough little monster," she whispered. Karen made a low, tired rumble, not pain, not fear, something closer to pride. Mara smiled faintly. "Yeah," she said. "Me too." Above them, the twin moons shone brighter, silver light washing over the clearing. The night felt still again, but now it carried something new. Not fear, respect. Two hunters, one human and one beast, had faced a wild, and neither had backed down. The night passed slowly after the fight. The fire burned down to quiet embers, glowing like the last heartbeat of the forest. Smoke drifted upward, soft and silver under the twin moons. The air was still, heavy with the scent of ash and blood. Mara sat beside the fire, silent, staring at the dark beyond the trees. Her hands trembled just slightly. The adrenaline was wearing off, and her body was beginning to feel the weight of every second. Across from her, Karen lay curled on the ground. His breathing was uneven, and a thin line of blood streaked his shoulder where one of the pack had struck him. He hadn't run. He'd stayed and fought beside her. Mara watched him for a long time. "You're either the bravest thing I've met," she whispered, "or the dumbest." The cub didn't move, but his ears twitched at her voice. She sighed and looked up at the moons. "Guess that makes two of us." After a while, she stood and went to her pack. From a small metal case, she pulled out a roll of bandage and a vial of clear liquid. "All right," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "Hold still. This'll sting." Karen lifted his head, wary. The smell of the liquid made his nose wrinkle. He growled softly in warning. Mara smiled faintly. "Relax, tough guy. I'm trying to help you, not skin you." She poured a few drops of the liquid on his wound. The cub hissed intense, claws scraping the dirt. "Yeah," she murmured. "Told you it'd sting." When she wrapped the bandage around his leg, he didn't fight. He just watched her with sharp golden eyes, studying every motion. When she tied the last knot, she gave the fabric a soft pat. "There," she said. "Good as new. Mostly." She sat back down by the fire and stretched. "You know, if we're going to keep saving each other's skins, we should at least agree not to kill one another first." Karen blinked slowly, his head tilted. Mara chuckled. "I'll take that as yes." For the first time since she landed on this planet, she didn't feel completely alone. The thought was strange, comforting and dangerous all at once. The forest stayed quiet, as if giving them peace. Even the night creatures, usually restless, remained hidden. Karen shifted closer to the fire, drawn by its warmth. Mara watched him carefully, but said nothing. When his tail brushed against her boot, she didn't move away. "Guess that's trust," she said softly. "Or curiosity. Maybe both." The cub let out a low rumble, not a growl this time, but a steady, peaceful sound. Mara smiled faintly. "Yeah, I get that." Hours passed. The first hint of dawn touched the horizon, painting the fog with pale light. The trees glowed faintly blue as the world began to wake. Mara stood and stretched. Her muscles ached, but she felt stronger than the night before. She looked down at the cub. "Time to move. The pack will come back when the alpha heals." Karen raised his head and blinked. She gestured toward the woods. "Go on. You've got a family waiting for you." But he didn't move. Instead, he stood and limped beside her, matching her steps. Mara frowned. "No, not happening. You got claws and fangs. You'll do fine without me." He ignored her. She stopped walking and turned to him. "You're serious." He stared back, unblinking, tail still. Mara sighed, rubbing the back of her neck. "I don't need a pet, you know." The cub let out a quiet snort, like he understood, and disagreed. "All right," she said at last. "Fine, but you stay quiet. No sudden lunges. No biting my arm off while I sleep." He tilted his head. "That was a joke," she muttered. "Sort of." Together, they began walking to the morning mist. As the sun rose, beams of golden light filtered through the tall trees. The forest looked different now, less hostile, more alive. Every leaf glittered with dew, and the air smelled fresh again. They walked for hours, sometimes in silence, sometimes with Mara muttering to herself as she checked her compass and scanner. Karen followed closely, keeping pace, his steps light and careful. At one point, a strange shriek echoed from above, a bird-like creature with wings of glass and eyes that burned red. It swooped down fast, talons spread. Mara drew her weapon, but before she could aim, Karen leapt. The cub slammed into the creature midair, claws flashing. They rolled across the ground in a blur of feathers and fury. The creature screeched once, then fell still. Karen stood over it, panting. Mara blinked, then grinned. "Okay, maybe I didn't need a guard dog." He chuffed softly, tail swishing with pride. "Fine," she said, kneeling to pat his shoulder. "You can stay. But we're partners now, understand? Not pack, not master and pet." He blinked once, slow and deliberate, the same gesture he'd seen her make when thinking. "Good," she said, standing again. "Then let's go, partner." They moved on together, human and predator side by side. By the time the sun climbed high, they reached a ridge that overlooked the valley. From there, the forest stretched endlessly, silver rivers cutting through green hills and mountains rising like teeth at the horizon. Mara stopped and took a deep breath. "Looks like we've got a long way to go." Beside her, Karen sat tall, his golden eyes scanning the world below. For the first time, he didn't see her as prey. He saw her as one of his own, another hunter walking the same endless trail. Mara smiled faintly and whispered, "Guess we both hunt now." The wind rose, carrying their scents across the valley. Two predators, bound not by blood, but by survival. And somewhere deep in the forest, far away, the alpha raised his head and listened. He knew the cub he'd once led was gone. What had returned was something else, something stronger. A bond had been born in fire and blood, a bond no world could break. The days turned into weeks. The forest that once hunted Mara now seemed to breathe with her. The trees no longer whispered threats, only secrets. The air, once filled with danger, now carried her scent like a quiet warning to other predators. Mara and Karen moved like one. Where she stepped, he followed. Where he growled, she listened. They hunted together, learned together, and survived together. Each sunrise brought a new test. Each night, a new silence. But slowly, the wild began to speak their names. The first to notice were the smaller creatures, the foragers and the scavengers. They saw the human and the beast walking side by side and began to whisper in the dark. They said the forest had chosen them, that the moons watched over them. When the larger predators came, they did not attack. They circled, sniffed the air, and moved on. Something about the pair, the way they carried themselves, made even killers hesitate. They were no longer prey, no longer separate. They were a single force, hunter and human bound by trust. One evening, as twilight fell across the valley, Mara sat beside a new fire. The flames burned higher than before, brighter, cleaner. Karen lay beside her, his fur warm from the heat. He was bigger now, his shoulders broader, his gaze sharper. The soft curiosity of Cub had changed into quiet power. Mara glanced at him and smiled. "You're growing fast," she said softly. "Guess alien puberty's not much different from ours." Karen blinked slowly, a gesture she had learned to read as amusement. She leaned back against a tree, watching the stars through the leaves. "You know," she said, "when I was a kid, I used to think space was peace. Endless, beautiful, safe." Her voice dropped lower. "Turns out, it's just another kind of jungle." Karen's ears twitched. He made a soft rumble, a sound that almost said, "I understand." Mara smiled. "Yeah, I guess you do." The peace didn't last. The pack returned, not to fight, but to follow. One night, their eyes appeared again among the trees, glowing faintly under the moons. Karen rose instantly, his body tense. The alpha stepped forward, old wounds healed, pride still burning. He growled low, not in anger, but in challenge. A test. Karen stepped toward him, not as a cub, but as an equal. He growled back, his voice deep and sure. The sound rolled through the clearing like thunder. The pack froze. The air trembled. The alpha lowered his head just slightly, a gesture of respect. Mara watched, breath caught in her chest. She didn't understand a word between them, but she understood the meaning. Karen was no longer the lost cub who had stalked her in the forest. He was something greater now, a bridge between two hunters. After that night, the pack never attacked again. Sometimes they followed from afar, watching the human and the one they now called the Moon Growler. Mara didn't try to chase them off. She let them watch. She knew what they were learning. They were learning fear. They were learning respect. And in their own way, they were learning hope. Seasons passed. The forest changed colors, from silver to green, from green to gold. The twin moons danced across the skies, and the legends began to grow. The smaller creatures spoke of a human who could roar like the storm. The hunters told tales of shadow that walked with claws and fire, and the packs whispered to their young, "Beware the pale one and her beast. They hunt the hunters." One cold morning, Mara and Karen stood on a cliff above the valley. The world stretched out before them. Endless forests, rivers that glowed blue, and mountains that scraped the clouds. Mara squinted at the horizon. "You see that?" she murmured, pointing to a faint metal shimmer far away. "That's wreckage. Maybe a ship. Maybe a way home." Karen's ears twitched. His eyes followed her finger, then shifted back to her face. Mara smiled sadly. "Yeah, I know. Home for me, not for you." He stepped closer, pressing his head lightly against her shoulder. She laughed softly. "You're not making this easier, you know." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and distant thunder. She looked at the wreck in the distance again. Then she looked down at the forest. "If I go," she said quietly, "I'll tell them about this place. About you. About what lives here." Karen growled softly, a low sound of protest. She placed a hand on his head. "Don't worry. I'll make them understand. You're not monsters." He looked up at her, golden eyes calm, steady. The fire reflected in his gaze, just like the first night they met. "Guess we both changed each other," she whispered. "You taught me how to survive. Maybe I taught you how to trust." Karen growled once more, not in warning, not in farewell. It was something deeper, something eternal. She nodded. "Yeah, I get it." When she finally turned to go, he didn't follow. He stood on the cliff's edge, watching her fade into the mist. From that day forward, the forest never forgot her. The packs told stories of the Two Moons woman, the one who walked with a roar that matched their own. They said she tamed the wild not with fear, but with strength and mercy. And every night, when the twin moons rose high above the valley, a single growl echoed across the hills, deep, haunting, proud. Some said it was the beast remembering his human. Others said it was the forest itself, mourning the loss of its fiercest daughter. But all who heard it agreed on one thing. In that endless wild world, there had once been human, and she had hunted like no other.